You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we focus on financial strategies for building a profitable food business. I'm your host, Sarah Delavan. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Erin Lehr, a food industry veteran turned bookkeeper whose unique experience on both sides of financial reporting offers a realistic look at what it takes to find the right bookkeeper and build a successful working relationship. Erin is sharing a ton of actionable information about what to look for, key questions to ask, and red flags to be aware of when interviewing bookkeeping candidates. She talks about what to expect when you're getting up and running with a new bookkeeper and provides keys to building a great long-term working relationship. She also offers up some advice on how to improve an imperfect relationship with your current bookkeeper. Erin provides so much valuable information in our conversation that we actually couldn't fit it all into one episode. But don't worry, we've got all the content that didn't make it into today's episode in a bonus mini episode available on YouTube. We'll have more info on that and some amazing downloads at the end of the episode. So now, without further ado, let's get to it. Erin, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, and I want to say before we dive in that I am so grateful for how we ended up sitting here today, because you heard me on a fellow food business consultant's podcast, Katie Malezova's Real Food Brands podcast, and reached out to me not knowing that I was working on a podcast, number one, and not knowing that I was looking for a bookkeeper specifically with food industry experience who could have this conversation with me that we are having today. So thank you to Katie. Thank you to you for reaching out and just wanting to learn about what I was doing, because I'm so grateful, and I know that this conversation is going to help so many people.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. I was excited to come across your work as well, because it's just so needed among so many people that own and operate food businesses and restaurants, and just getting that knowledge in, and you provide a lot of that. So I'm excited.
Thank you. So again, one more thing before we dive in. You were a business manager for a chef owner operator for 7 years, and then decided to make the transition to bookkeeping specifically for food businesses. And I'm curious, what sparked that change?
Yeah, so I had, before that owner operator, had a lot of corporate restaurant management experience. So everything was very numbers driven. And the chef I worked for also had a ton of corporate experience, and he opened up his own restaurant. So, numbers we lived and breathed by them on a daily basis. What the labor was, what our sales were, what our reservations are, all of that. And we made daily management decisions based on, what happened last week, what happened yesterday, and then what we have kind of coming down the pipe, so to speak, with reservations and holidays and whatever that could be. So that was just my mindset on how to run a business. Or at least a restaurant. That's what I thought. And I had outgrown that role, and I left. I did a little sidestep into tech, and I realized the whole time I really missed working with entrepreneurs and owners, and I really missed working with small business owners. So I'd already thought in my mind that every business ran a tight ship like the restaurant business does. I just assumed that's what they did. And when I spoke to more and more of them, I realized that's not really the case. They're doing what they love. They're doing what they're passionate about, which is great, but they don't always know the numbers. They don't always know their costs. They don't always know what is really happening on a day-to-day basis. So I realized the technology is now there for me to do remote bookkeeping, and I can go in and I can do it and make sure that business owners know where they stand on a monthly, weekly basis within their numbers.
It's so helpful, because I think it's helpful for this particular conversation, because in my experience, I've learned that some bookkeepers who don't have specific food industry backgrounds or experience working with food businesses, they just don't have a full handle on the intricacies and what the important metrics are, and the value of looking at your numbers every day. So I'm excited, and I'm glad that you are a part of the, food business community in the way that you are now, because your service is so needed as well. So thank you. I want to lay a little bit of groundwork before we talk specifically about, how to find the right bookkeeper and how to build a good working relationship with the bookkeeper. And that groundwork, I want to start with, number one, what is the difference? And we talked about this in a previous episode when we had Melissa Houston on, who is a CPA, but I'd love to hear it from you as well. What are the differences between a bookkeeper, an accountant, and a CPA? Just so we can kind of make sure everybody is clear on that.
Sure. So a bookkeeper, I might start from the top and work my way down from the bottom. So okay. CPA is typically going to be your tax specialist. And I myself go to my clients for a CPA to really get your taxes done, but not just get them done, but really take a whole look at your personal finances as well as your business finances and help you make the right decisions with your taxes. Typically, that's what a CPA will do. An accountant is kind of in that middle of they can file taxes if they're licensed to file taxes, and they can do a little bit of that bookkeeping. So I know accountants, but their business is bookkeeping. And then a bookkeeper, I would say for the vast majority, a bookkeeper is definitely more, so to speak, in the weeds of your business. Like they really know the day-to-day of what's going on. Versus when you kind of get into an accountant, they're also balancing taxes with their other clients. They might be doing the bookkeeping, but they've got a million other things to do. Bookkeepers are very more designated to do just the day-to-day. But based on that day-to-day, they can also help you foresee what's coming down as well. So what bills you've got coming, all of those things going on. So and some bookkeepers do file taxes. I do not. I prefer to send people to spend some decent money on getting your taxes done well, and sticking with that person for a long time. So that's just my thing. I could go get certified, but I don't like tax code. I don't want to mess with it. I'd rather just go to an expert that knows it. So
yeah, who lives and breathes that specialty. Speaking of bookkeeper versus accountant versus CPA. CPAs, obviously, there's an education level, or, they're certified. Accountants will have a particular degree. Is there a degree or a certification for a bookkeeper? Or another way to word that is, what makes someone a bookkeeper?
Yeah. So in the U.S., there is no real gold standard on a certification or a degree. There's lots of various degrees floating around. There's lots of training programs floating around, but there's no real, I have a bachelor's in bookkeeping or anything like that, or a gold standard certification. I would say the biggest thing is no experience, number one. Like how much experience they have and who do they have it under. And there are some training programs that will at least say, this is what we hit. This is what this person learned. This is what they're certified in, those kind of things. And then there's certifications within softwares, which is pretty important. Quickbooks offers a certification, ProAdvisor, and that's I think very beneficial. Not to say there's not great accountants and CPAs and bookkeepers out there that don't have that, because I know a ton of them that don't have it just because they're that good and that old school that they kind of don't need it. Not that they probably couldn't take the test and just ace it, but some people just choose not to. But for the most part, I would definitely look for that if I was looking for someone to handle my books.
Okay, fantastic. And you talked a little bit about, what a CPA does versus an accountant versus a bookkeeper, but I want to make sure everybody is clear on the essential functions of a bookkeeper. And I want to get clear on this because there are many business owners who, among the many, many, many things that they try to accomplish in a day, in a week, in a month, their own bookkeeping is sometimes on that list of things to do. And so I like to talk about the benefits that a bookkeeper can bring to you as a business owner and to your business as a whole.
Number one, peace of mind, because they're going to organize your finances. So Organization of finance, that means record and reconcile every business transaction that happens. So what you bought, your sales that came in, organizing those in the right way. And then after that, once you have a solid organization of all those finances, now you have accurate reports. And those accurate reports are your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and your cash flow statement. Not to say that there couldn't be other reports out there, but those are kind of the big three that you want to be eyeing every month. So that would kind of be the gist of all of that, is peace of mind, accurate reporting, and just the day-to-day reconciliation of every transaction that comes through.
Got it. And then is there anything that you would say bookkeepers do not do that maybe business owners mistakenly believe that they do, that you think is maybe important to point out?
Secretarial work. So, I do understand there's businesses out there that, and I was one of these roles in the restaurant, is I was that catch-all person. I ran the back end of the business. I didn't do a lot of client or customer-facing interactions. I did all the back end stuff. So I did a little bit of that. But, if you're hiring an outside agency or company to do your bookkeeping, they're not going to do these little secretarial things. And then some areas that are I would call gray are taxes. Like I said, I don't do taxes. There's other bookkeepers out there that will do taxes. I will assist in your sales tax, making sure that it's right, making sure your percentages are correct, but I'm not going to file those on your behalf. I will help you. I will do those kind of things. So if you're looking at a bookkeeper, make sure you get that very clear, because I've heard nightmare stories where they thought, oh, well, you're doing my taxes, and come to find out no one has filed the taxes. Payroll is also kind of a gray area where, I don't put in the hours and I don't manage the hours of employees. That should be more or less an on-site. I also don't really do the taxes for payroll. What I do when I do payroll is I go with a full-service payroll company. And that means we put in the hours, they handle all the taxes, they handle all the filing of the taxes. It's just one and done. So that's kind of I would call a payroll assist role for a bookkeeper. Not really full-on payroll. I don't sit there and try to figure out the tax situation for each employee, none of that. I think that the taxes are a big one for sure.
So it seems like, when we're talking about the essential functions that every bookkeeper should be doing, it's that the entering, the organizing of the financial transactions accurately in your accounting software, which is going to save you a ton of time and money at tax time, delivering accurate reports in a timely manner, which we're going to dive into that in a little bit more detail in a couple of minutes. And then when those reports arrive, they're accurate so that you can make better business decisions. So that's sort of the core of what people should expect and what should be delivered from their bookkeeper as a partner of their business. So if we're ready to hire a bookkeeper, let's put ourselves in the shoes of a business owner. We're ready to hire a bookkeeper. What are key things to look for, or are there key questions that business owners should be asking their bookkeeper candidates as they're doing their search?
I would go ahead and ask for certifications or education. I mean, I know, like I said, there's no real gold standard, but it doesn't hurt to ask. And if they say they don't have any, that's totally fine. Just ask, where's their experience from? Maybe they worked under a CPA. Maybe they worked with an accountant. Maybe their dad, they just grew up doing that. So kind of get a vibe of, there's a lot of people coming into this field, and not to say that some of them that are new are, totally green, but I think having a little bit of experience helps. Any kind of software certifications. Ask about industry experience as well. There are people like me. I have restaurant experience. I have food business experience. There are this industry is going very more niche focused, which is awesome, because people that know the industry can really come in and add value and know what to watch, and also have other contacts within that industry.
Yeah.
A big one would be security. What do they have in place for security? especially that they do everything remotely. How I would say, I would ask, how do you set up your workflow, which could be a whole can of worms. And you're not really going to know if that's good or bad. But, ask them, how do you handle your online security? What do you use? What things do you have in place? I would say a red flag, and I know we're going to maybe touch on this a little later, is if they want access and passwords, you shouldn't ever have to share any of your passwords to anyone. There should be a situation where their number one workflow, or number one at the very beginning, right out of the gates, is you need to set up my own account and my own password for pretty much everything, especially banking. I have had clients where they'll just I don't ever ask this question, but they'll just hand me their login and password to their bank account. And I'm just like, stop. I don't want that. Go change it right now. I don't want any touch of that. So, if anyone ever asks you, what's your bank password and login and password, immediately, done and run, like done. There's no reason they should ask for that.
I love that you're bringing up security, because I'm going to be honest, that's not really on the radar, I think, for a lot of people. So when I work with clients, freelance CFO, I'm in QuickBooks and I'm looking at what they're doing, but I'm granted access, a certain level of access. I need to log in on my own side. I never really thought about, the need for security when you're working with people financially, because it's your financial information, access to your bank account, like critical. So I'm so glad that you brought that up.
And they should say, like, I'm very upfront. I said, I never want, I don't want that liability. I don't even want that liability. So if I do have a client that just hands over everything, I'm like, no, you need to go and change that. I don't want that liability. I don't want any of that.
Yeah. What about deliverables? Because I know something that I run into a lot is it seems that there's an expectation that the business owner has that for one reason or another is not being met by the bookkeeper. And sometimes I think, did you all talk about this in the beginning? Did you get clear, on the deliverables? So how does that, like, if you're looking for a new bookkeeper and you are, trying to figure out if they're the right partner for you in your business, how can you address that? Like, what are the deliverables? Maybe, like, do you just say, what are your deliverables? Or do you want to get specific during the conversation? Can you touch on that?
Oh, this could be a whole conversation. I would say this is a constant source of tension with clients and bookkeepers and accountants out there. It's most bookkeepers and accountants I know, they really want to stay on top of things. They want to do a good job. They want to get their work done. They don't like to have things pile up. I'm definitely one of those people. And there's always that time where I'm going to need something from them. I'm going to need, a report or a question answered before I can get from point A to point B, because accounting is very much a process. And until I get that first step, I can't move on to the second step. So there's always this friction, and business owners are busy and they don't realize the importance of it and they don't understand the steps, which is fine. But I think number one is, if you're looking for a bookkeeper and accountant, just flat out ask, what are your deliverables and when can I expect them? On the flip side, as a business owner, I would definitely realize that when you bring on a bookkeeper, that this should be a relationship. This should be constant communication. And I'm not saying every day. A lot of it depends on how fast your business moves. But you should be ready to start engaging with them, especially in those first 2 to 3 months. It's very critical. And if we're dealing with any kind of cleanup job with going back in the past, that is so important, because you want to get that done so you can move forward. And again, it's a step-by-step process. So be ready to engage, be ready to, a lot of times people they want to bring on a bookkeeper, like, oh, okay, I finally brought someone on. I'm totally hands off. I'm out. Actually, you're going to have a little more work in the beginning than ever before, because we're going to bug you for questions. We're going to bug you for answers and documentation. I don't say bug, but there's going to be things that we're going to need. And if we don't have them, we can't do our work. And if we can't do our work, we can't provide deliverables.
So up front, you want to ask, you kind of want to ask what are their deliverables so that you can hear from them, okay, this is their idea of what the deliverables are. Does that match with what my expectations are from my bookkeeper? And then have the awareness or the expectation that those deliverables are not going to just start magically happening, but it's going to take some time and some work on both of your parts to I love the word that you used. It's a relationship, and no relationship can exist without a little bit of work, right? From each party. And I think we're going to talk about that. I would like to talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes, but I'm so happy that you touched on that. Something that you mentioned to me in a previous conversation was asking if your bookkeeper is insured. And this is another thing similar to security that I never thought about. So can you talk a little bit about what type of insurance maybe a bookkeeper should have in place?
Yeah. So it's just errors and omissions insurance. So that is if they were to do some huge goof up and it went through your taxes and things like that, they're insured to handle any kind of lawsuit or litigation or anything like that. Okay. And it just solidifies their business more. So the old school word is bonded and insured. I don't even think bonded is an option anymore. Maybe for trades, but I know not for accountants and bookkeepers and people of that nature. But insurance is definitely pretty much anyone who's in business should have that.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you're contracting with anyone, myself included, make sure that the person has some insurance to protect your business, your relationship. And to me, it's sort of like a doubling down on that person's commitment to doing the best job they possibly can. I don't know if that's just sort of my perception of it and what I think it brings to a business. Do you think it's important for a bookkeeper to have, a proper LLC, or, if someone is just, an individual person, solopreneur with a bookkeeping company, I'm making air quotes for anybody who's not watching the YouTube version. If they have the insurance, is that enough? Or do you think that there should be any kind of formality to the business structure of a bookkeeper?
I think if you're going to hire an outside service provider, and if they're, I'm just going to use the word legit, they most likely should have an LLC. Not to say that there's some sole proprietors out there that are probably just really old school, but even then I think they would be, they should have an LLC by then. It's a protection on their part too. So to me, it's just another level of I'm serious, I'm a business, I'm a legitimate service provider here to provide you a professional service.
You mentioned a red flag a couple of minutes ago, and honestly, I can't remember what that red flag was, but I made a note and I said red flags. Are there any, I guess I'll say any red flags that business owners should be on the lookout for as they're doing the interviewing of potential bookkeepers?
Yeah. Again, I'd go back to the experience level. I think the biggest thing is ask a bunch of questions, but really listen to how they answer them. Business owners don't know the ins and outs of this industry, and that's completely understandable, but how they answer them should really give you confidence or red flags. If they're confident, if you know that they sound, not to say that confidence can't, still have someone distrusting, but how they answer it. So red flags, I would say, again, that security question, how long they've been in business. I would just ask what their processes are. And I understand, again, as a business owner, you don't really know what their processes are, but just ask the question, because if they've been in business enough and they are professional, they have processes, and they will probably just go on a rampage, or not a rampage, but just continue to like just not shut up about their processes. What else? What other red flags? I think just really how open and communicative they are, because again, communication is huge. So, and if what they're speaking on, really just ask a lot of questions and gauge on how they're answering. And if it's just very short, very, blunt answers, I would kind of question that. Or, maybe they don't always know the answer to a question, but if they at least know, hey, I'm not sure, I'm going to get back to you on that, and they get back to you on that, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always that sort of initial, if you're reaching out to a bookkeeper and you want to, or any professional really, you want to schedule a meeting with them, or if they get back to you timely, right? That's showing a certain type of like behavior or professionalism versus someone who takes a really long time to get back to you. That's, start noticing those things up front. I think that's a good tip. And then regarding pricing, I've heard from some bookkeepers, that you like a qualified bookkeeper, and I'm again making air quotes, shouldn't quote you a price without seeing your books, or, there's some guidelines that folks have around how bookkeepers should be pricing. And I wonder, number one, if there are any red flags. So if you ask a bookkeeper about their pricing, is there anything that should make you sort of pause? And then do you have any sort of general advice around what to look for, or maybe what is a good standard to expect from a bookkeeper?
Pricing is all across the board right now in our industry in terms of hourly versus fixed rate. I do a fixed rate. And so what a fixed rate is basically I look at, okay, how much data do I have to manage? And data means bank accounts, transactions coming in and out of those bank accounts, any loans, do you need help with payroll? All the things you have going on in your business. So in that, I cannot put a stamp on it's only going to cost you X amount of dollars a month, because every single business I deal with is completely different in terms of what they have going on. That is just me. There's a ton of other bookkeepers out there that are like that as well. And then you have hourly. Hourly is, I don't want to say it's bad because it's not, but I think with hourly, it prevents that relationship from happening, because either one or both sides of the party are like, oh, well, I really got to ask them a question, but I don't want to get charged for it. Or even the bookkeeper's like, well, I don't want them to think that I'm just trying to run up the hourly rate. So, but I do have a ton of questions. So neither one is bad, but I think if you're doing hourly, you need to get very, very specific on expectations, on, what does that look like? If I call you for a 5-minute phone call,
right,
is that going, am I going to get charged for 15 minutes? Am I going to get charged for a half hour? So if you're going the hourly route, that's fine. Just get very specific on what the expectations are on that. And the other thing with hourly is, you can't predict, you can't count on that. You don't know what it's going to be 1 month. I've taken on clients where they paid $70 1 month and $500 the next. And it's like, right, whoa, that's a little unpredictable for business owners as well. So the fixed rate is a great model. I myself as a bookkeeper have kind of gotten burned on it at times because I'll price it, but it is what it is. That's part of the situation. And there are months where, especially around tax time, where I'm doing a lot more work, but there's other months where I'm not. So it ends up averaging out fairly well. So I really couldn't throw any red flags out there other than if it's hourly, I just basically either one, know what you're getting. Know what you're getting if it's month to month on paper, in a contract or an engagement letter, either month to month or hourly rate.
That's great advice. I love that. And then my last question on this topic is, is it okay to, and should business owners ask how many active clients the bookkeeper currently has? Is there a potential for overload, or is that something that's not necessary because the bookkeeper wouldn't be accepting clients if they didn't have the capacity?
Yeah.
Generally.
I don't think it's super necessary, but I'm never going to tell anyone not to ask a question. So, if you feel that is, then I definitely ask it. There are a lot of bookkeepers that also have contractors that help them. So I guess I would ask that question before I'd ask how many clients they have. Or you can ask both,
Okay.
but I would ask, do you have any other people working for you? And what does that look like for me? I don't have contractors yet. I'm very close to probably bringing on some, but that's basically going to entail it starts and ends with me. Who does the day-to-day work, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I'm having to look over everything and I'm delivering the deliverables to the client. So I think that's a question to ask for sure, is do you have other people, and where does that fall with me? Because sometimes some other companies and bookkeeping practices are set up totally different, where, okay, you talk to maybe the owner, but then now you're talking with the contractor and communicating with them all the time. And that's fine, but I think if that's going to be the case, you need to be able to talk to them before you sign anything and sign up with them and know, okay, do I like this person? Can I communicate with this person? Do I feel like they're going to, do a good job for me? Not to say that the owner of that bookkeeping company didn't hire someone bad, but there's got to be a little bit of chemistry. There's got to be that good communication between you guys.
Yeah. Amazing. So earlier you talked a little bit about the relationship, and that the business owner and bookkeeper relationship is just that. It's a partnership, but it's, at the core, it's a relationship, and you've got to do some work. You said it could take 2 to 3 months to really set up what I'm going to refer to as a good system and a good partnership to work together. And I know that, every food business is unique, whether you're running a cafe or a restaurant, a catering company, a CPG brand, even within each individual niche of the food industry, businesses are so different. So it's hard for us to say this is the way to do something. But I would love to talk through any recommendations or foundational steps that business owners can take with their bookkeepers to help ensure that they're setting their partnership up for success.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for us?
Absolutely. Communicate, and over-communicate would be the sum of this. But number one, know that you're getting into a relationship. At least that's what you should be doing. If that's not the case, then maybe you need to find someone else, especially in the food business, because you guys have so much going on. So, you got stuff coming from all different directions, income and invoices and all of that stuff. So, your business moves very fast. Now that I'm working with other businesses, to this day, restaurants, food business still move faster than any other business I know. At least for now. But yeah, there's just so much going on. So knowing that you're going to have a relationship and communicate. And then I think right off the bat is I always ask my clients, how do you like to communicate? Do you like to communicate by email, by text? Some people use Slack. All those various formats. What do you prefer and what's going to work? And then the bookkeeper should be taking the role in this. So I think that's something to realize is, I don't want to come in and rock a business owner's world, but I am going to come in, I have to do my job. So I don't want to come in and throw a ton of crazy stuff at you, a ton of new softwares, unless it's absolutely necessary. So having that communication just about processes and workflows and all of that kind of stuff. And then when you first start, I typically like, especially if I clean up job with clients, is I like to go ahead and plan out, okay, we're going to meet 2 weeks down the road, we're going to meet another week or another 2 weeks down the road till we get through this cleanup, till we get our systems and processes on board. So be ready to kind of not clear your calendar, but be ready to sit down and have those one-on-ones, have those appointments, take those phone calls, whatever it may be, to really start on the right path and get those workflows and processes. And the bookkeeper is learning your systems, and you need to be learning their systems as well. It is a give and take on everybody's kind of learning a little bit on, okay, well, I now know when the best time is to call you. I now know that actually you don't like email, you like text kind of thing.
Right.
At least meet on a monthly basis, bare minimum. I have clients that are super easy. We've got everything established. We've got it all under control. Not much changes within their business. This isn't a food client. So there's not a lot going on in their books, but we still meet. You still want to meet on a monthly basis. Give them deliverables. Have some kind of conversation, touch base, something like that.
If you have a bookkeeper and maybe your relationship isn't perfect, your partnership isn't running smoothly at this point in time, and you can maybe sort of modify this a little bit, but in some cases, like the books need to change a little bit. For example, all of our sales are lumped together in one sales category, right? So things aren't working perfectly. It's a great opportunity to schedule some time with your bookkeeper and say, I want to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful and for us to be successful together. And I want to start with what our business does, where we sell, how we operate, and what's important to us, right? What we're striving for. And I think that there's value in that because number one, if everything's coming in from Square, right? Your direct to consumer, farmers market sales and your online sales and even your wholesale sales are all coming in from Square, and your bookkeeper doesn't know that you have 3 different, sales channels. They're just going to lump all of that together into one category, right? But that's not serving you as a business owner. So really providing them with this information upfront or at right now, wherever you are in your relationship, if they don't have that yet, I think can provide a tremendous amount of value to the bookkeeper. And then they can ask you the questions. Okay, well, maybe where can I run these reports so that I can see how much is coming in from each channel? Because it's unclear the way that it's coming in now, right? Or how can we set up a workflow for this to make sense? Do you have any tips for the food business owners listening, maybe other types of things they want to be sure to touch on with their bookkeepers in terms of workflow or processes or anything like that?
I don't have anything specific, but I would say basically based on what you say is you get out of your bookkeeper what you put into it. Basically, that's the best way I know how to say it. So if you're having those meetings, if you're communicating with them, you're going to get more of those detailed reports, more of what you're looking for, more of, that one-on-one time, but there does have to be that other side. I've unfortunately had to let go of clients because it's just like, I wasn't getting any information, no information to where I could not do my job. And I don't want to take payment on something that can't do. Yeah. I physically could not do my job because she just would never respond to emails, never get back to text, nothing. It was just silence. And then when I finally said, hey, we're going to have to end this relationship. It's just not working right. All of a sudden it was like panic, but it's just it is, you've got to put in a little bit. So you can really get a lot out of your bookkeeper if you put in. And I'm not going to say you have to put in as a business owner a lot. You really don't even have to put in a lot. Just have that communication. And exactly what you said. What can I provide you? What can I do for you? Or, hey, I would prefer this. Or what if we look at this? Or I really need to know what these sales are. I don't need to know what this random little thing over here is about.
Right.
Talking, having those conversations on what you value, what's important, and then providing that information. The more information, for me, the more information and the more access I have, the faster and the more detailed I can get. So if you want a very detailed P&L, you need to either give me access or allow me to get the information I need to get that detailed P&L. It's a give and take, but it sounds like a lot of work, but it's really not. You just got to be open to providing it. And then once you establish a workflow and a system, it's a no-brainer. It works very well.
Yeah. I know of some clients of mine right now that are keeping paper like receipts and invoices and sort of packaging them all up. And then at the end of the month, they get delivered to the bookkeeper. And it makes me, you could hear it in my voice. I get so worried because it means we have no real-time data. We hit the end of the month, and then we've got to put everything into the system, and things are not going to be turned around very quickly. I've been open on other podcast episodes. I love a 7-day turnaround on at least the P&L, but if that's ready, then I think everything else is ready as well, because food businesses need to make decisions quickly. They need to know if things are going well or if something has stopped working.
Yeah, absolutely.
In their business. Yeah. So I think my question to you is, are there ways of, and this is sort of a broad question, but are there ways of getting information to your bookkeeper quickly, like scanning or emailing, or, is there any recommendation or insights you have for so business owners aren't sending you the same information every month? Like, this invoice is for food. This invoice is for packaging, right? Like, can those things be ironed out at the beginning of the relationship to kind of make things move quickly and efficiently?
I think number one is consistency. So getting back to those invoices piled up at the end of the month, I couldn't function if I got those invoices at the end of the month because of everything you said, because it's like, how do you know your numbers? And at that point, now you've got your bookkeeper in scramble mode, and they're just going to try to get as much done as they can, and because they're already dealing with end of month, but now they're dealing with all these invoices, and they just want to get it done. Not to say that they're careless, but now you've just upped their workload by double. So they're trying to get that done. They're trying to get all the other things you've got going on done. And then you've got to get deliverables out. Is that going to be accurate by then? They're going to be so focused on just trying to get through it that it's not always going to be probably as best as if it was on a weekly basis.
Are there things that business owners can do or set up so that things run efficiently? And I know that this is stuff you need to work out with your bookkeeper, but I just kind of want to plant the seed for the business owners listening in regard to can I have my invoices sent to my bookkeeper, CC'd? Do I want that to happen? Is there a downside to that? Is it cool if I don't know, scan them and email them to you every Monday or every Friday? Are there things that they can say, this works for us, and this is something that we want it.
So I think the bookkeeper should be able to kind of take the lead in this. Again, they shouldn't come in and so to speak, rock your world in terms of systems and processes, but most likely, especially when you've got a ton of invoices coming in, there is going to be a new procedure and system set up. There are some awesome softwares out there that can do this kind of stuff. So what it is, there's one I use, Receipt Bank. You send me a scan, actually don't even send it to me. You send a scanned image of it. It goes straight into Receipt Bank. And then from there, I can pick it up. I can read it. I can take that information and move it into Quickbooks. So there are all sorts of platforms out there like that. I think, one, the bookkeeper should see the bottleneck, if there is one, with that.
Love that.
And they should be taking the lead on, okay, let's fix this. And then on your part as a business owner, you should be able to be like, okay, yes, let's figure this out so I can get real-time numbers or as close to real-time as I can get. And we can stay on top of this, and we're not getting this end-of-month bottleneck situation. Yeah. And then I don't get my numbers from last month to the 25th or the 30th of the following month kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, I think as a business owner, if you feel there's bottlenecks, definitely that goes back to the communication part. Bring it up to your bookkeeper. But your bookkeeper should see these as bottlenecks first and offer solutions. I would say, though, just be ready for processes like that, especially invoices can get really hairy really quick, and just being able to, but that they can also be very simplified, and there can be systems and processes that are super easy. I'm actually doing this in another country. One of my clients has a team in Colombia, South America, and there's a language barrier and everything, but they are shooting me invoices to Receipt Bank, and then I'm picking them up and we're moving on with life. So
Right.
language barrier and all, it works. But you just got to be ready to kind of have a slight different change, maybe create another habit or two. But, you'll start to see the payoff when you start to see your reports on time, when you can start making decisions much quicker, when you can really understand your numbers, when you can really know what's going on in your business. That's going to be your reward on creating that small little habit, or creating that small little tweak, or taking that extra half hour to an hour to sitting down with your bookkeeper a month. You'll start to see the payoff.
Yeah. I love this. I think that our time together has been so full of valuable information. Again, we're going to organize the, important things to ask a potential bookkeeper and some of the red flags that you should look out for, so that the listeners who are interested in utilizing that maybe as a checklist, they can do that.
Awesome.
And I think, I take notes all through the episode, and my biggest note with the circle around it is communicate, and then be clear about your expectations, and be upfront about those, because once you're clear about that and your bookkeeper agrees that, yep, I can meet those expectations, then everything else can sort of flow from there, it seems like. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I would love for you to stick around for a little bonus YouTube episode if you're up for it. I have a couple additional questions I'd love to ask you. But for now, we will sign off here. And I appreciate your time so much. Thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Thank you. I had fun. It was great. Thanks again.
You're so welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Erin as much as I did. And I'd love to know if you had an aha moment, or if there is something Erin shared that you'll be implementing either as you search for a bookkeeper or work to improve your relationship with your current bookkeeper. You can join us inside the Profitable Food Business community to share and continue this conversation, or send me a DM on Instagram to let me know. Your relationship with your bookkeeper is an important one, and I want to support you in really making it work. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll talk to you again on Monday, when we'll be joined by financial coach Caroline Snyder for a money mindset checkup. Until then, have a great day.